Good morning, everyone. Parak Ches, Mishna Tes. Okay, so quick introduction. Basically, a wine press in the times of the Mishnah consisted of three parts. You have the Gas Elyona, the upper reservoir, where the grapes were trodden by foot. The tziner, the pipe, which connected the upper reservoir to the vat. And the bar, the vat, where the wine was collected. Now, in our Mishnah, there's going to be the wording is going to be the upper reservoir, and the vat is referred to as the bottom one. But that's the setup. You've got where the grapes are on top, where they're tread. You've got a pipe that takes the wine into the bottom reservoir. But the case of our Mishnah is the following: Chavis shenishbara begaso elyona. You've got a barrel of truma wine, and it's sitting in the upper reservoir. And it breaks, starts cracking, it starts coming apart, wine's coming out. So what's going to happen now is the wine from the barrel, the truma wine from the barrel, and this is truma tahara, this is pure truma, is going to go down the pipe and now mix into the bottom reservoir. The Mishnah is in state, but the Mishnah then continues, va'tachtoina tameya. The wine in the bottom reservoir is impure. It's not truma that's impure, it's chulin. Regular wine, it's not truma, but it's tummy. So now you've got this truma wine that's now going to be flowing into the chulin wine that's tummy. So we've got a situation here. The situation is that the truma wine, if it mixes into the chulin wine, will become tummy, will become impure. The chulin wine is going to become a duma because the case is that there's not enough wine in the bottom to nullify, as we're going to see, any of the wine that falls in. So the chulin wine on the bottom is going to become a duma. It's going to become a mixture of chulin and truma, but it's a mixture of chulin and truma that's tamei. If it's truma that's tamei, it can't be consumed. You can't drink it. Even a kohen can't drink it. It's tamei. It's wine, so it's not oil that you can use it as a fuel. And although there is a Gemara that says that you could actually, let's say the wine gives off a good aroma, so you could sprinkle the tamei wine around to give a good aroma, that's only by old wine, not by new wine, which would mean we want the Mishnah's case to be a case that includes all cases of wine, or once it includes even cases of wine, even a case of wine where it's new wine, not just specifically. Right. Well, that's not relevant right now, actually. But the point is that well, yeah, right now it's not irrelevant. But so the point is that it gets mixed. If this chulin wine becomes meduma, there's going to be nothing to do with it. So there's a potential there for a complete loss. Now, what a person could be doing is, if he has vessels that are tar, that are pure, he can actually try to catch the wine that's coming out of the barrel. And by doing that, save the wine that is truma, which is tar, from becoming tamei, which we know one is supposed to do. One has an obligation. We call it mishmeres shemosai. We have to guard the truma. We have to guard it from becoming tamei. So if he were to go ahead and have vessels that are pure, he could catch the wine in pure vessels. He saves the truma wine from becoming tamei. The chulin on the bottom doesn't become a duma, and that would be great. The problem is that in our case, that's not what he has available. The only vessels he has available at hand right now as the barrel breaks are vessels that are tamei, that are impure. And if he catches the truma wine in the vessels that are impure, he is going to be directly making them. That's actively making the truma impure. He could go now and maybe run to a different place and find vessels that are tar. But by the time he comes back, you're gonna deal with wine coming into the truma wine going into the chulin wine on the bottom. Truma wine, some truma wine will be ruined. It will become impure. It will be ruined, and the chulin on the bottom is going to become completely impure. So this is the scenario. This is the case. He does not have any utensils that are tar that are available. He can go and get some, but by the time he comes back, the chulin wine on the bottom is going to be messed. It's going to become a duma, and there'll be nothing you can do with it. So what do you do? So in this case, and now the Gemara is kind of skipping ahead of itself, because you'll see from the wording that there is going to be a case like this, where there'll be an argument between Rebbe Lezer and Rebbe Yeshua, who these are two Tanakh sages who already had before arguing in a different case. Again, regarding the obligation to guard Truma from becoming Tameh when already there's problems with it. But let's read. Maide Rebbe Yeshua, Rebbe Lezer, Rebbe Yeshua, both Rebbe Lezer and Rebbe Yeshua agree. That if by the time he comes back with a pure utensil, he will be able to save from the truma, that is tar, a revius, a quarter of a lug, which is a couple of ounces, according to anywhere between, depending on different opinions, anywhere between 3 and 5 ounces. If he is able to save, meaning if by the time he comes back with the vessel that is pure, he will be able to save a revius of wine, that it should remain tahar, yatzel, he does so. That means, in order to save a revius of wine, to save it from, and saving it, meaning allowing it to remain tahar by catching it in this vessel, even though by the time you come out with this vessel, a lot of it is already poured into the bottom reservoir, and therefore it's become the truma wine that fell in became tamei, the chulin wine became meduma, and basically everything that's in there is messed up. That's a complete loss. Nonetheless, if you're able to save a quarter of a lug of the wine to remain tahar, that's what you do. Everybody agrees that's what you do. And the reason is everybody agrees that's what you do there is because, as I mentioned before, the Torah calls it mishmeres trumasai, to guard my truma. There's an obligation to guard truma from becoming impure. But that obligation is only an obligation on a quarter of a lug. Less than a quarter of a lug is not considered an important enough amount to obligate one to go bring tar containers. Meaning, less than the obligation, the minimum amount of wine, there's a minimum amount of truma liquid, that there is an obligation to guard from truma. The minimum amount is a quarter of a lug. Less than that, you're not obligated to guard. So if you can get the minimum, if you'll be able to save the minimum amount of wine that we're supposed to guard from impurity, then everybody agrees that's what you should do, even though there's going to be a big loss of everything else, even though there'll be a loss of everything else. If I can basically fulfill my obligation of guarding truma wine, which the minimum amount for that obligation is a revius, a quarter of a lug. Lug is a liquid measure. So that's what you do. Go run, get the pure vessel, save your quarter lug, and what happens to the rest of it is that's what happens. It's lost. The question is though, but what happens the imlav? Now, if let's say by the time you come back with the pure vessel, you would not be able to save a quarter of a lug. The amount you'll be able to save is less, which is no obligation to try to protect, to save. The imlav, if not, so what happens then? Rabbi Eliezer oimei tered v'sitma v'ayitam ena biyadav. Let it go down, let it become impure, but don't make a tamei with your hands, meaning don't directly make a tamei. According to Belezer, he says like this. You should not, if you can't save a quarter of a lug, then just let it go by itself and let it become tamei basically on its own. You should not then go ahead and take a vessel to save it. You shouldn't do that. Meaning, the question would be that in order to go ahead right. If I'm going to be able to use it, the situation is I have this broken barrel. I only have tamei vessels. If I use the tamei vessels, I'll save the chulan on the bottom. And if I go get the vessels that are pure, I'm not going to be able to save a quarter of a lug's worth amount. So what are you left with? You're left with a situation where if I use the tamei vessels, I will make the truma wine tamei directly because I use the vessel to catch it, but I'll save the chulin. Says Rebbe Lezer, better let the chulin get ruined, lost, than to directly make the truma wine in the barrel tamei. Okay, so let's put this all together. You've got the barrel of tar truma wine. It starts coming apart. The truma wine's coming out. It's going to go flowing into the bottom reservoir that has chulin wine that is tamei. The vessels at hand are only tamei vessels. So we say which means if I use the tamei vessels to catch the truma wine, then I'll be making the truma wine direct. I'll be making it directly. I'll be actively making it tamei because I use the vessels to catch it. If I use that tamei vessel and I make that wine tamei, I'm at least saving the bottom wine, because if I don't catch the bottom wine, the top wine, which is truma, is going to fall to the bottom wine. That tar truma wine will become tamei. The chulin will become meduma because it's mixed with truma, and there's not 100 times more to nullify it. And everything on the bottom will be a total loss. Everything will be a total loss. Anything that goes in will be a total loss. Now, so what do? So we say, but I could run to get other vessels and possibly save some of the wine. So we say like this, according to Rebbe Lezer, if you have enough time, and according to everybody, we're going to see that, according to in that case, according to everybody, what you're going to do is you're going to go run, get the tar vessels, catch, and if by doing that, if I can save a quarter of a lug of tar truma wine by running to get the tar vessels to catch the truma wine, then according to everybody, that's what I do. Even though by the time I come back, some of the wine from the top will go into the bottom will become completely ruined. It'll be completely useless. But if I can save a quarter of a lug of wine, which is the minimum amount that I have an obligation to guard from becoming tamei, then that's what I do. That's what I do. But if I won't have enough time, but if I won't be able to save a quarter of a lug if I go get the tar vessel, so according to Rebbe Lezer, the halacha is, you don't take the impure vessels to catch the wine, to save the chulin wine on the bottom, because then you're directly making the tar wine impure. And you're not allowed to do that. We will see in a future mission, according to Rabbi Yeshua, being that at the end of the day, right, if you let this chulin wine go down, right, if you don't use the impure vessel to catch the truma wine, then what's going to happen is that the truma wine is going to go into the bottom reservoir, and whatever is there is going to be completely ruined, completely lost. According to Yeshua, being that if you don't, meaning if your choice is use a vessel to directly make the truma wine impure, right, or let it go, Rabbi Yeshua's argument is, so basically that truma wine on top, right, if you use a vessel to catch it, it becomes tamei. If you don't use the vessel to catch it, it also becomes tamei, because it's going to flow into the bottom, and there's not enough, and by running and getting a pure vessel, you're not going to be able to save a revius anyway, which is the amount that I'm obligated to do. So I can't save a revius. So that wine on top, whichever way you go, is going to become tamei. You catch it in the vessel, it's going to become tamei. You let it go into the bottom, it's going to become tamei. Says Rabbi Yeshua, if it's anyway going to become tamei, catch it with the vessel and save the chulin. Even though you'll be directly making the truma impure, but since according to Rabbi Yeshua's argument is going to be that even though it's going to anyway become tamei. So there's no difference between it's anyway going to become tamei. If it's anyway going to become tamei, then there's no problem with directly catching it, if it's for the purpose of saving the other wine. So Rebbe Lezer says you should never actively make truma tahar impure, even though it's going to become impure anyway. And Rabbi Yeshua's argument is it's going to become pure anyway. If it's going to become impure anyway, now it's a question of actively making it tamei by catching it in the tamei vessels to save the chulin, I'm allowed to do that. So that's what it means when the Mishnah says, you don't have the ability to save a quarter of a lug. Rabbi Lezer says, let it go down and let it become tamei, but do not directly make it tamei. Don't make it tamei with your hands. It means to say, don't directly make it tamei. By taking an impure vessel and catching a tar wine, you're directly making it impure. So we have to remember this because the next two Mishnayos are going to revert back to this Mishnah. In this case, where again, Rabbi Lezer says that if you're not going to be able to save a quarter of a lug, you do not directly catch the tar wine to make it impure in an impure vessel. Rabbi Yeshua would say that in order to save the bottom chulin truma, you would use impure vessel to catch the truma wine, that's tar, because it's anyway going to become tamei. However, even Rabbi Yeshua agrees that if you can save a revius of tar wine, you can save a revius of it, which is the minimum amount we have an obligation to guard. So then he would say, then even though the bottom is going to get ruined, better that you fulfill that obligation and save the truma wine. Mitzvahs leisaseh shor lenachesh. A positive commandment not to do what's called nichush. Shenamar, as it states, lo yisanachashu, do not perform nichush. What's nichush? So here in this English translation, they call it augury, A-U-G-U-R-Y. I personally never heard of such a word. But what does it mean? Doing nichush means that you have people that say, nafla piti mi pi. The piece of bread I was eating fell out of my mouth, or makli nafal miyadi, or my stick fell out of my hand. I'm not going to this place today. Meaning, if this is what we say, if basically bad luck. If I'm eating a piece of bread that falls out of my mouth, that means bad luck. No, I'm not going today. I have to go somewhere to take care of something. The piece of bread fell out of my mouth. Bad luck, sign of bad luck. I'm not going. I had my stick in my hand and it just all of a sudden fell out of my hand. Bad luck sign. Not going. Basically, you go ahead and you create. There are these standard bad luck signs that people believe in and act upon. Or let's say he makes signs for himself. And if this and this happens to me, I'm going to do this and this. If it rains, then I'm going to go to the store. Okay. If basically, that's not a good example because that could just be a very practical thing. These signs basically make no sense. There's no connection. There's some random thing happens. Oh, that's a sign that I'm not going to do something. Or a random sign. If the sun comes out of the cloud, if the sun comes out from behind the clouds, then I'm gonna drive somewhere. There's no connection. You're just making some random sign to act upon. That's nichush. If a person acts based on any of these kinds of signs, he has transgressed his prohibition. This applies in all places at all times, both by men and by women. Have a wonderful day and a wonderful Shabbos.